Get ready. I can't hear you.
Test. Can you hear me now?
Chat, we got Adam22 is the special guest, everybody. Let's go. Very hype. Hey, Nick, man, how you doing, bro? How you doing? I've been teasing him for a while. They're getting a little bit annoyed. How you doing? How you been, man?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a long time. When's the last time we streamed together?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I think that had to be last summer, right?
It's been almost a year, huh?
Yeah, almost.
But
What's new?
What's new, bro? Everything's new. Crisis King is trending every day. It's now an anti-Semitic term. Candace Owens, Standice Owens, she's finally, she got groiped. October 7th happened.
Yeah.
Ban the ADL. It's the Overton window. It's, you guys pretty much. How much more has to be done?
Well, there's much work to be done, but yeah, we won. It's funny because last summer really 2 summers ago we connected, and last summer we did Fresh and Fit, and we did our own stream down there in South Florida, and all the stuff that we had talked about that prior year is now in the mainstream. Like a year ago, and I'm sure your audience, my audience, we've both been following this stuff. All that stuff that you got canceled for, I had been canceled for, Myron got canceled for. We all said it a year before, and now it's like you can't turn on Twitter without seeing it everywhere.
Everywhere, man. But some people need to sometimes bro, you guys should relax a little bit. Our friend Lucas Gage is he's going balls to the wall every single day. I think you should maybe tune it down a little bit so you don't get banned. But you can't really, once people start to wake up, they don't want to shut up about it. Like Jake Shields, all these guys, they're really enthusiastic, which is good. Yeah,
no, Lucas, don't get me wrong, he's funny, and he's like the berserker, man. He's like the Marine. He goes in there, he's like he's the battering ram, blows the door off. But yeah, no, it's been pretty incredible. But how about you? I saw you've been in Mecca and everything like that. Is that your official pilgrimage, or what? How does that work?
Well, so Hajj is coming up in June. I went to Mecca twice. I went in November, and then I just came back from Ramadan. I was in Mecca and Medina. Took the whole month fasting, and it was good. It was good to fully focus on that. But I had this epiphany today, coming back after a month in the Middle East and fully dedicating my time to my religion, Islam. It's it doesn't seem like there's that much left for me here. I lost everything. I lost the YouTube channel. You remember that? I lost my Instagram account. Fresh and Fit lost it. I lost all the opportunities. If I'm gonna be honest, there was a while where I'm maybe I'll get a brand deal. Maybe I can just maybe they'll reinstate me. They're not going to reinstate me. I saw a post from Jerusalem Post, lying, putting misquotes. Media Matters put a piece that I saw yesterday, pretending I hit a woman when it was a skit. It was me and this girl, and I just slapped my hand, and they made it look like they actually posted that as if I was hitting a woman. And it's I'm never going to be mainstream again. Yeah, I just got to fully embrace it. And I remember when I was trying to play the game and not do the stream with Cheezer. I'm maybe I'll be able to make my way back in, but it's pretty much, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, and I know that behind the scenes I always told you gotta do what's right for yourself. If that's your strategy, was to try and get back into the mainstream and kind of funnel people in or wake people up that way.
Yeah.
I think that's a worthwhile approach, but you're right. Eventually you just kind of run out of options. They cancel you, you get the hit piecemeal going after you. And like you said, it is what it is. It sucks. But the good news is, I think you said this to me earlier, it's there is a whole scene now of people that have been canceled, that have said this stuff, that are probably outside the mainstream. So it's not like it used to be. It's not like it was 5 years ago, where if you were outside the mainstream, you're kind of dead. You're kind of done. You have no opportunities. We're kind of on the cusp of a new period, a new era, where you could be outside the mainstream and actually be more famous and more popular and even make more money than people inside. And I said this on my show last week. It's guys like Shapiro and Charlie Kirk and all them, how many young people are willing to die for Shapiro and Charlie Kirk? How many young people believe in their message? All the young people, all the youth, all the energy, the trajectory is with people like us, people like you, people like me, this message. So it's one of those things where I feel like you kind of got to get in at the ground floor of what the future holds rather than try and rule what's popular now, because I think it's fading very quickly.
I mean, that's what people gravitate towards, and you see it dominate in every single chat and every single reply to tweets. I don't know if you have like an AI software, but every time I tweet like anything, there's like a key clip of you that comes up in the replies to tweets from certain clippers. You can't ignore it. You know, they pretty much lost that narrative, and that's where all the energy is, because that's what people are really passionate about. And I come to realize, like, especially since I started streaming 2 years ago, is that there's very clearly spiritual warfare. So people are always going to gravitate towards somebody that's telling the truth and somebody that gives meaningful content. And there's not any like real longevity. Like the mainstream stuff is fun, like running around, you know, since we met, like, you know, I went to the whole mainstream thing, ran around in LA, done collabs with everybody and all this stuff. And then it ends. And then they just look to the next thing, like who's the next pimp or prostitute? Who's the next like guy having a mental breakdown on stream? Who else can we watch? Because they just want to be entertained. They don't want to get behind a movement. And that's what really lasts. And you see it. Like I was watching, I don't want to name the stream. I saw a stream today. And at any time, like the issue of what's going on in Israel or Palestine comes up, which is the most contentious issue. And I would say not just that, but also the most important issue of today. Because all roads lead back to this once again. Like somehow your name comes up again, or somehow this movement comes up again. Somebody who's speaking about it comes up again. Muslim, I see my name pop up, but really like whenever it's Christianity, whenever Americans speak about it, it's 100% you. So the more they try to silence it, I come to realize like they can't win, especially with, you know, Oh, I'm waiting for you to come back on X, man. Really, you know, I wasn't saying it for a while, but Elon Musk really needs to reinstate you. I don't know what he's waiting for, because everybody keeps talking it, like everybody's posting your stuff anyway. He might as well just put you back on.
I know. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think they're deliberate. At this point, it's clear they're deliberately keeping me off, because it's not like they're not aware of that.
They are. They must see it every day.
They have to, yeah, because every time Linda Yaccarino gets on Twitter every day and says, we're here dedicated to free speech, and the top 10 replies are like, okay, what about Nick Fuentes or Jared Taylor? What about Nick Fuentes and, you know, this or that other person? And I've heard even about private conversations where people talk with the trust and safety team at Twitter, and they talk about, well, we brought all these people back and it's so great. And people I know have said, okay, well, what about Nick Fuentes? And they go, yeah, well, I mean, there's exceptions, but blah, blah, blah. So they're very aware of it. And I saw you talk about this the other day on the stream. You said the ADL put out a list when Elon Musk acquired Twitter, 5 or 6 people they wouldn't let back on. And it was Trump, Tate, me, Alex Jones. I think Bannon was on there as well.
And David Duke, right?
And David Duke, right. And I think it's me, Bannon, and Duke are the ones that didn't get put back on. And so I've done the appeal a million times. They don't let me on. You know, the thing is, like you say, all the clips are already there anyway, and they get millions of impressions. One of the clipping accounts got 18 million impressions in 1 week. You know, and that's just like a clipping account. That's like a secondary thing. So it's ubiquitous, and people have talked about it before, but they just can't allow things like, you know, I was on there when Candace Owens got fired, and I was there for like 3 days, and I got on a Twitter space with Jeremy Boring. And I bullied Jeremy Boring, the CEO of a $100 million per year conservative media company. And the guy was saying, oh, I watch you all the time. You're so talented. And I was dogging on him for being pro-Israel. And I think everyone agreed, even people that may not like me, that I made reasonable points. And that was me being on a burner for 3 days. And that's all that took. So I think they realized that if I were on there with a verified account accumulating followers, I mean, I don't mean to sound conceited, but it's like literally the system cannot go on as it currently does if I was on Twitter and allowed to kind of be more institutional. So I think that's why they're keeping me off. Which
and it must irritate them, because I mean, at least Rumble, you're allowed to be on this website, but I see Elon Musk talk about having free speech, and then every time he says that, there must be like a little itch in his head, like I'm a fraud, you know, because I'm really not allowing this. But it's difficult, because I've come to realize like how many, I almost feel bad for the people that have to play this game, because they have to play this pretend game of like, oh, we care about all different voices, we like a diversity of opinions, And as soon as you have like, you can't be anti-genocide without being a brand risk. You know how stupid that is? You can't clearly call out what's going on without hurting someone's brand. And the fact that they all have to sell out and they all have to play this game for people that are committing genocide, and everybody knows it. Everybody's aware of it. The fact that they don't have that free speech, I almost pity them. But it's been cool to see in this time too, like especially guys like Jake Shields. He's like, they're talking about, yeah, like I thought Nick Fuentes was a white nationalist, and then you see his stuff and he's actually like, he's making some good points. Like a lot of guys who didn't know, like I think Lucas Gage must be in his late 30s. Jake Shields, I think, is 45. I talked to Owen Benjamin. He likes your stuff too. A lot of these guys are in their 30s and 40s, and they're just starting to wake up. And I encourage anybody watching this, I'm 20, you're 25 too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, highly recommend. It's not too late to admit you were wrong. A lot, because when I first started talking about this 2 years ago, you know how many people thought I was legitimately insane? People thought I needed to get on medication. People thought that I must have been sick, that I must have been, like, I was getting all sorts of, and now everyone's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. October 7th was really, it's about the 40 beheaded babies, all this, that, seeing that narrative shift, people are starting to question this and really think, especially you're seeing a lot of conservatives who, because you have the movement of America First. That's your movement. They say something like, I'm America First, and then they'll follow it up by saying Israel's our biggest ally. And then the next question is like, what does Israel actually, what do they give us? What do they give us as Americans? What do we get from this random place in the Middle East? What's the benefit for fighting all of their wars, for giving them all of our tax dollars? Why, like, people don't ever question that, but they see these politicians on the stage with the Israeli star, and they kind of get used to it, and they get used to us having to work for them, but they don't know why. And I think as soon as we get that conservative base that really cares about America, like I would say the biggest one is like the Sean Strickland crowd. So Sean Strickland's always, I don't know if you know who that is. He's an MMA fighter. Yeah, I fought him 2 months ago, and he's always talking about America first, like, oh, we need to bring back traditional values and all this. And then you look back at the old tweets, and he's saying a lot of like really anti-Islam stuff. A lot of these guys really believed in the psyop for the last 25 years that Muslims are terrible people. And I think that's the biggest shift, because a guy like Lucas Gage, for example, he probably grew, like, if I'm going to be completely honest, he probably hated Muslims for a good amount of his life. He probably thought that, Americans all about this, and that Muslims were the ones that were destroying freedom. But in reality, if you go to the Middle East and you meet these people wearing like the terrorist clothing that these people think, go, la, 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 la. These people they don't like the fact that the United States is fighting wars in Israel for the Middle East. They don't care about like what America's doing. They think a lot of the stuff is demonic, but they don't think Christian values are a threat to what they do. And as soon as you get like the Sean Strickland crowd of people who say, oh, I'm America first, America, once you get those people to wake up and be like, wait, but why are we giving all of our money to Israel? Then there's going to be a giant shift.
Yeah, that I saw the Strickland fight with you, and for what it's worth, I thought that was pretty cringe that he was trying to knock you down and this anti-Eceleb thing. I thought that was, and I think a lot of people said that was poor form. If you're a fighter like that and you're sparring with an amateur, and I mean, you're an athlete and everything, but you're not a professional fighter like Strickland. So for him to go hard on you like that, I don't think that was very tasteful. And you're right. I mean, his whole thing, I mean, I don't expect him to be perfectly politically literate because he's a fighter, but a lot of that stuff is missing the mark. A lot of this cultural conservatism that comes from Barstool and comes from some of these fighters. There was one fighter this week that talked about the Austrian School of Economics. That was like so cringe, I wanted to kill myself. Like seeing this guy get up there and say, oh, it's Ludwig von Mises. It's like, what, did you get red pilled yesterday? Is that like baby's first red pills, like a Jewish economist? But no, you're totally right. And I saw the other day, I was watching Tim Pool, to the point of people that are in the mainstream and having to lie about it. It's like Saturday was the first time that Iran ever bombed Israel. It's like a huge deal, massive deal. Iran and Israel are at war. Everyone understands the implications of this. And I'm watching Tim Pool the other day, and they spent 30 minutes talking about how like some liberal kicked over a Trump sign, a Trump lawn sign. And it's like, at this point, you can't be in the mainstream. Like, there was a time when you could be in the mainstream, and I don't think it was you had to sacrifice too much of your dignity. I think that you could kind of comfortably ignore these topics. And it was clear that they were deliberately ignoring them, but it wasn't so obvious. It wasn't so in your face. It wasn't so ridiculous. Now it's like so in your face and so transparent. It's like the day after Iran bombs Israel, and they want to talk about how, well, look, a libtard knocked over a Trump sign. I went to Starbucks and they wouldn't write the name Trump on my cup. It's like, okay, so you're controlled opposition. Like, what are we doing here? And the same goes, to be honest with you, for a lot of these mindless streamers, not even for these political guys like Tim Pool. I mean, that's pretty pathetic. You're a political streamer. You got to talk about politics. But even these other live streamers that I watch on like Kick, I don't hate them. I don't have animosity for them. But I watch some of that stuff from time to time, and it's just so mindless. It's just like, I thought reality TV growing up was mindless entertainment and bad. Then you watch these live streamers, somehow it's even worse, because at least like reality TV, they were like professional dirtbags, professional slobs. These live streamers are like, they're just like amateur slobs like you know in your life. They're just, so I watch this stuff and I'm like, between the live streaming that goes on Kick with the gambling and the porn stars and these, you know, scripted bottom of the barrel drama, and then on the other hand you get the political content. It's so obviously fake, obviously canned, pulling their punches, won't touch certain subjects. I look at the whole spectrum of content, I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, it's not entertaining, it's not informative, it's just fucking slop. Like, they're just filling up the trough with garbage for all these piggies to come and eat out of the gutter. I don't think it's really dignified for anybody to be a part of that anymore. So, you know, I get why people...
I mean, it's an empty pursuit completely. I understand why a lot of the appeal and people wanting to make money from it and make a name for themselves and make notoriety. But at a certain point, it's like all you're going to do is have to one-up the degeneracy more and more and more. So if you follow that path, you're going to end up promoting gambling. You're going to end up as a pimp or a prostitute, and you're just going to funnel your audience to become worse. And they're not going to learn anything. It's just going to become kind of a cesspit. They turn into parasocials, and there's nothing actually productive at all. And for the, oh my God, the TTS is on. And for the political people, it's getting cringe at this point. It used to be like a big, like oh, he said transgenders can't swim with other transgenders. My bad, the camera off. And now people are rolling your eyes about that because that's the most, it's just like, but what's going on? But I came to the realization too, like there's a lot of stuff that you can't say and get brand deals. Like I tweeted, we stand with Iran because the IDF bombed the consulate in Syria and killed a bunch of Iranians. And I was getting calls from people like, oh, you don't want to, they're like, Iranians just got killed, you know, and I'm not supposed to, like, well, you don't want to be seen as a threat. So why is it really worth sacrificing money, brand deals? Like, what am I doing here? I'm turning on the camera, and should I not talk about people dying so that I can make a couple more shekels? And I decided, like, just absolutely not. And I remember you said it pretty eloquently on the stream we did with Destiny. I think that was like one of my favorite monologues from you, where we did the after hours. It was with all the girls, and you were talking about the meaning of God and what we're supposed to do, and the whole purpose there. And that's what I want to leave my audience with. If there's anything we could do, it's just that you should come here and you should just try to be yourself. Don't try to appease anybody else. It's like there's no amount of money that, if you pursue money, there's no amount that's ever going to be enough for you. If you pursue fame, there's no amount that's ever going to satisfy you. There's always going to have to be more. You're always going to have to one-up it. The only actual fulfilling thing that you could do is to follow God and try to promote something that's good and speak the truth. All the rest, it's all filler and it's all temporary.
Yeah, that also is one of my favorites, because I think that really gets to the heart of the matter with a guy like Destiny. And he's representative of so many of those types, even ones that are right-wing, because, you know, not to dog on the guy, although he's kind of my nemesis at this point, but he's like the perfect picture of a degenerate in America. Like, he's a complete nihilist. And not only is he an atheist, but he's almost like completely unconcerned with the eternal, with the good, with the real. You try to engage with him and say, hey, what do you think happens after we die? And he says, I'm not interested in that. I want to talk about how we can make education more affordable. It's like, in what universe is like that more important? So he's like a nihilist, but he's also uninterested and just won't even engage with those things. This string of scandals that's come out about him between the divorce, these DMs that leaked where he's into some really kinky sexual stuff. He's like half gay, like he's into drugs and all this stuff. And so in a way, it's not even about me being right wing and him being left wing. It's about you and I being concerned with even if we go different routes, we fundamentally are concerned with trying to connect with God, trying to connect with something real and something good and something true. And although we're both imperfect, we're both trying to discern those things, trying to discern right from wrong and striving to live our lives closer to the right side. Whereas he exists in the space where he's really unconcerned with all that. It's about this very vapid and hollow career, shilling like State Department talking points. And you look at a guy like that and you wonder, when he looks in the mirror at the end of the day, what does he see? And, you know, the day that he dies will be a day just like this one, like any other. On the day that he dies, what will he see when he looks in the mirror? And that's why I said this on, I think, Twitter or Telegram the other day. People need to stop trying to be. They need to just be. Because everybody wants to be in a certain kind of state at some point in their life. They want to be richer. They want to have a certain type of relationship. They want their life to look a certain way. And they imagine that once they arrive at that place, then they'll feel good. But, you know, not to sound trite, life is about the journey. You know, life is about the now. Every day in the monotony of waking up in a bed and tying your shoes and taking a shower and driving where you need to go, that's the stuff of life. And if you don't enjoy it now, you're not going to enjoy it then. So it's not about trying to be or trying to get somewhere or be perceived a certain way. It's about, like you said, being yourself. And what makes us feel good? It's actually simple things. It's telling the truth. It's being with people we love. It's doing things that are consistent with our conscience. All these other pursuits are a bottomless pit. And you spoke on this briefly. When you want money, you find that appetite is never sated. No appetite is ever sated. It's completely restless and bottomless. Things like sex, you know, I've never had sex or whatever, but I don't know that I've ever heard of somebody that has sex with, you know, the person they're chasing and then says, wow, that hit the spot. Now I'm ready to focus on the stuff that matters. It's an endless pursuit. You feed it and it grows and it always consumes more. So, you know, life is about recognizing that, you know, this is enough. You're enough. Life is enough. And let's live in and you know, one of the things I admire about Islam is its simplicity, its piety. It's saying God is enough. Of course, we disagree about the particulars, but, you know, people ought to think more in that way.
Yeah, that's the most fulfilling I've ever felt. I would come to this like almost this epiphany, like what am I doing after the month of Ramadan? Because I think the core tenets of Islam when it comes to this life is that all of this life is a test. You know, you're not supposed to think of life in terms of happiness, in terms of dopamine and what you can get right now. Everything is a test in order to get to the afterlife, because eternal paradise is where the real happiness, that's where all of this comes, because this life is very short. It's temporary. And if you look at the scale of everybody who's lived in existence, we're very, like, there's been thousands of people before us, thousands of years of people before us, and there's going to be people for thousands of centuries after us. And so our time span here is very short, and all we should be doing is try to do the righteous and try to be pious while we're here and be able to do the right thing that God would want us to do. And also, when you look at when you follow those tenets and when you follow those things, which is, you know, praying, which is doing the right thing, telling the truth, being simply being a good person, and especially in Islam, which is giving charity, you realize that that's more fulfilling than anything else that the liberals or the nihilists, the atheists have to offer. There's nothing there. The most fulfilling you could ever feel is more than money and more than any of these things is like simple things like charity, by doing the right thing, by telling somebody the truth. Like those things will carry you on to the next day. And when in Islam, when we let go of that sort of metric of happiness and now, and that, you know, this is all a trial, and we're just supposed to be working to the next life. And this is why a lot of people resonate with the Palestinians, because even though they're getting, it's a genocide right now, and even though it's clearly unfair and the whole world sees it, a lot of Palestinians are extremely happy that their brothers are dying. They'll see their brother die in war, and in Islam, that will give you the highest rank in heaven. Right? When you die in martyrdom, when you die fighting for your cause and for your brother and for the sake of your religion, that guarantees you the highest spot possible. That's the most honorable death you can spend. And what's really surprising to the Zionists is they see a Palestinian, holding their brother in their arms, and sometimes they'll say Alhamdulillah, which means I thank God, because that means that my brother here, even though I'm not going to see him now, he has passed the test of life to the highest ability possible.
Yeah, these Zionists, man, it's actually kind of notable. I feel like you and me connecting was the beginning of what people now are calling this like Christian-Muslim alliance against Zionists. And I feel like that was kind of the first iteration of it. It was when you and I started streaming, or when we first met a couple of years ago on that stream, and you then became a Muslim, and I'm, of course, a Catholic. And then we were talking with Myron, who's also a Muslim, on Fresh and Fit about this a year ago. Then October 7th happened, and there's this thing on Twitter where Muslims and Christians are speaking out against Israel. And lately I've noticed that a lot of these like Jews and Zionist agents are coming out and trying to split apart the Christians and Muslims by saying, they think there's this alliance, but, Muslims are just as bad, or something like that, or saying, well, Christians are weak, and this sort of thing. And I don't think it needs to be more complicated than this. Israel colonizes Palestine. Israel colonizes America. Therefore, Muslims and Christians are working to dislodge Jewish power, which dominates both the countries. I mean, we don't agree on religion. We probably don't agree on a few other things. But in this limited sense, even if for nothing else, although I think we agree on more than that, I think we have a common cause. Why would there be this? But then you realize Jews hate to see people antagonizing Israel. And you realize that is their modus operandi. They want to set every other person against each other, because if we're so interested in fighting each other, then we can't recognize who the greatest threat is. And I said this on Telegram. A lot of people don't even realize this. You're American, I'm American. The United States has more Jews than Muslims. So we think about Jews as a very, very tiny minority, and they are. And yet they still, in the broadest possible sense, there are more Jews in America than Muslims. So I see these Jew conservatives, and they're like, well, I don't know why Christians would team up with Muslims, because, Muslims are not part of Western civilization. It's like there's 3 million Muslims in America. There's like a fraction, I think that's like half or less than half of the amount of Jews. And then what really matters is who runs the government. It's not about how many, it's not a head count of who exists in the country, but how many exist in the highest levels. Who's running the Ivy Leagues? Who's running the White House? Who's running these different institutions? And then forget about it. It's like Jews are 1,000,000% more represented than Muslims. But yet conservatives will get on and say, well, the real problem is Muslims. It's like, well, Muslims didn't send us to Iraq. Muslims aren't the author of this neoliberal economics, which has deindustrialized the West. Muslims haven't been pushing this anti-white stuff in the New York Times and Hollywood. They don't run Hollywood. So, we can't fall into the trap of overthinking it and getting into these particulars. We have to recognize that for any American patriot, the road to a better America runs through putting Americans in control of America. And the obstacle to that is those that currently run America, which is Zionists and Jewish power, not Muslims. Now, full disclosure, I wouldn't want Muslims to run America either, but Muslims don't run America. So that's not really the contention. And I wouldn't want Muslims to overrun America in terms of population, but that's also not happening. What is happening today, and what is real, and therefore what is salient, is that the Zionists do currently and have for decades controlled most of the elite sectors of the country. That's the thing that matters. So I don't know why anybody talks about anything. Well, we know why. They talk about it, and you talked about this a moment ago. They talk about this because they want Christians to hate Muslims and imagine this illusory threat of like Sharia law in America. They want Muslims to fight the Christians, because if we're too busy fighting each other, then Israel is bulldozing Gaza and clearing a way for the Jewish Antichrist.
I mean, it's
very
very simple power dynamics. Like you divide and conquer. And I think that was the most successful PSYOP of the past 25 years. And why there's a big awakening and a push for this type of content. You're right. There's a very few amount. It's actually like, I never knew the demographics in America, that there are only 3 million Muslims here. The fact that I'm here yapping about Islam all day long and I'm still able to sustain an audience means that there's so many people that are starting to learn about this and wake up to this that didn't know about it before. So it's very telling that the narrative is shifting quite a bit. And that's why I like the fact that's why I tweeted Christ is King, even though I don't believe, I still like, it's a lot of scholars called me up and they said that was incorrect and it's shirk. But you could say he's like, king isn't, it's not that prescriptive of a word. So I think that there's disagreements there, but I like the phrase Christ is King because it's getting the Zionists really upset. The fact that you can get a phrase like that, it's kind of like the BLM for people who are anti-Zionist. It's like it hits them where it hurts. So seeing that sort of alliance is important. And I have debates in the community all the time about this religious warfare, but I tell these people that it's ultimately a waste of time, because we should focus on the common disagreement, which is Zionism, and see that there's a lot of common shared values, and that's extremely important. But I'm wondering what you think. Where do you think is next? Because you are finally seeing a lot of your work come to fruition after about 7 years, right? You had this big disagreement with Daily Wire for a long time. If we're going to be honest, Ben Shapiro's probably not going to debate you, even though he should, and we should keep on pressing him to do that. Ethan Klein, for example, on the H3H3 podcast, he called me out to a debate. He said I was stupid and it was going to be easy, and I said let's do a debate about Zionism. And then he ran away. They're very afraid of talking about this, so that would be a major step. But what do you think is the next step for this movement and for this narrative? Because you've made a lot of strides in the right direction as of the past 6 months.
Well, it's that really is the fundamental question, because you're right. I mean, I've been beating this drum for 7 years from a right-wing perspective. It's been going on the left for a long time. And we could get really into specifics on this, but you realize, and I don't, I'm in no way, shape, or form a leftist. I'm not even liberal. I'm illiberal and I'm a reactionary. But what you realize is that a lot of these right-wing people hate leftists so much because, in as much as leftists are shit, they have exposed how the right wing is controlled by Israel and by the CIA for years. I was just doing some research on this today. There's this publisher now called Encounter Books. Encounter Books published the memoir of some rabbi that officiated the wedding for Stephen Miller, who a lot of the right-wing people are claiming is one of the good Jews that is going to restrict immigration in the next Trump administration. Okay, they say, why are we criticizing Jews? There's good Jews like Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller's rabbi was an advisor to the ambassador to Israel, and he also published this book in Encounter. And Encounter was an old magazine back in the 60s that was funded by the CIA. Okay, literally funded by it was a CIA outfit or cutout, and they had some of the most famous conservatives writing there that have shaped this classical liberal conception of conservatism for 60 years. And the CIA's funding for this magazine was exposed by the New Left. And what you also find is that all of these Zionist conservatives for the past 20 years, when they're shitting on the New Left, they're always criticizing the Palestinian rights groups on college campuses. And that's because they all went to Ivy League schools, which have huge Jewish populations, and they all hated the fact that the Ivy Leagues were graduating classes of people that were sympathetic to Palestine. And many of the conservative campus groups were funded by neocons, funded by Jews, funded by pro-Israel think tanks. And so you realize that so much, ironically, so much of the anti-left-wing stuff is in a way a veiled pro-Israel thing. Because ironically, in as much as you might think the left wing they hate America in their own special way, they have been exposing how the right wing is hand in glove with the CIA, with the Mossad, with Israel. And anyway, so the left has been hip to this. What I'm trying to say is the left has been hip to this for a long time. And so that's why so much of the opposition to what's happening right now is coming from the left. And the new left has basically won the war. Now the battle is over the right wing. Now we need a right-wing vision which counters the pro-Israel lobby, counters organized Jewry, but they're trying to prevent that by co-opting it. So Trump comes onto the scene in 2015 and says, America first. And people like myself, that was like a latent red pill, because we hear that and we're like, yeah, America should come first, but it can't, because Israel stands in the way. You know, taken to its logical conclusion, America first is that right-wing vision that counters the Israel lobby. But now what you're seeing, and that has come to fruition over the past 7 years, that's a contradiction which has been resolved over 7 years. It took some longer than others. For me, it clicked very quickly, but for other people, it took them time. Now people like Candace Owens and Kanye and other people are seeing it. But what they're trying to do now is they're trying to prop up, and pay very, very close attention to this. They're trying to prop up people that say they are America first, that say they are nationalists, that say they are like me, but in reality, they still work for Israel. This is how they always do it. It's called skin suiting. It's like invasion of the body snatchers. They dress up. They cut my skin off and wear it like a suit, and they say, hi, I'm America first. And, you know, you shake their hand, it's a skin suit. They're actually a Zionist underneath. Perfect example, they're trying to make J.D. Vance the vice president right now. There's a rumor that J.D. Vance is already the vice presidential pick for Donald Trump. J.D. Vance is part of national conservatism, which we've talked about before. It's this new outfit, which I think Peter Thiel is a part of in some way. National conservatism hosted a conference in Belgium this week, in Brussels, and they had this Jewish presidential candidate in France come up, Zemmour, who everyone thought was like an immigration restrictionist, everyone thought was a nationalist. He went up at this conference and said, Europe is not a people, it's not a nation. Europe is built on Judeo-Christian values. Okay? So the National Conservative Conference, that's all about nationalism and conservatism and America first, they put up a Jewish presidential candidate in France to say, Europe isn't about white people or Christianity or the Catholic Church, it's about Judeo-Christianity. And it's from this outfit that they found J.D. Vance, who has a host of other disturbing connections, to be the vice president in the Trump administration. And that guy is going to go in there and cut out anybody that's actually like me and fill it up with people that pretend to be like me. So for me, the future is this succession battle. The right wing needs to make sure that there is a truly alternative right wing that takes over. We can't have a right wing that comes after Trump that slides back to the same neocon, neoliberal, Zionist propaganda. But that's what they appear to be doing. A lot of these people are maneuvering and positioning themselves so that when Trump takes office, they're going to fill up his admin with Zionists pretending to be nationalists. And then when Trump leaves office, they're going to pick a successor that will complete that, and it will be as if Trumpism never happened. America first never happened. So that is really the future. I mean, I think that we won the war of ideas. Clearly, that's why they're pretending to be like us. But what we need now is the follow through. So what we need is for real patriots and real Christians and real believers to get into politics with a commitment to infiltrate over the course of decades, over the course of generations, and see this revolution through. We need to build an independent, a base of power that is independent, an entire network that is not dependent on and answering to the Zionists, because that's the next step. They're trying to create this new right, left, center fusion. Bill Ackman is a part of this, where they say it's just going to be colorblind meritocracy and we're going to close the border, but keep giving money to Israel. It's Vance, it's Bill Ackman, it's Peter Thiel, it's Curtis Yarvin, it's all these guys, Claremont Review. They're all pushing this stuff. So that, I mean, and that's some stuff that's like political nerd stuff. That's not like.
Well, how successful could this are people actually gonna fall for this?
They already are. They're like, here's a perfect example. They're trying to push J.D. Vance so hard right now. He's the senator from Ohio. And, you know, you're going to see more and more of this, but it's already been happening behind the scenes. They're going to say, oh, he's the greatest, blah, blah, blah. J.D. Vance in 2016 wrote an article for the New York Times and said that conservatives didn't like Obama because they were jealous of how smart he is. And they're racist because they didn't want to see a black man in the White House. J.D. Vance in 2016 said that Trump is a toxic racist and instead voted for Evan McMullin, who was a CIA agent that was handpicked by Bill Kristol, who's like the king neocon Jew that convinced us to go to war in Iraq, to run against Trump in the Republican primary, okay? Or rather, as an independent in 2016. That's J.D. Vance. And they're about to foist him onto the Trump ticket as a vice president, and they're going to say, this is terrific. J.D. Vance is America first. He's as conservative as it gets. Conservative, he voted for the CIA agent handpicked by the neocon Bill Kristol. He said conservatives hate Obama because they're dumb racists that are jealous of how smart he is. He came from the American Enterprise Institute, which if you look that up, it's like a hotbed of neocon Zionist Jews. So it's like that will be a huge litmus test. If he's going to be able to get in, if he gets in as a vice president without any kind of, and I'll be providing some pushback, but if he can get in without any kind of popular discontent, it'll be a huge litmus test to show that people have been psyoped. That's the danger, because we won the argument. Now J.D. Vance has to pretend to be a Groyper, basically, even though he's been a Zionist agent for his entire life.
It seems, I mean, from sometimes I wonder if I'm in an echo chamber, but it seems like this is the main issue. If you could just ask them the question, do you support Israel or Palestine? Something so simple like that. A lot of them will have these answers like, oh, it's a complicated issue. You know, you don't want to, no, it's very simple. It's genocide. And if they're not able to answer that, I think you pretty much are able to figure out their entire worldview from there. And it's going to be difficult. The fact that it's a decades long battle that you're going to need young people, like young motivated Christians. And I met some of them. I see them out in public sometimes. Sometimes they'll whisper. They're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm America first," and I'm like, "You are?" And they're like, "Shh." Or sometimes they'll see them at like Trump rallies and stuff like that. It's gonna be extremely difficult. There's gonna be a lot of battles. But what I really liked at Ye 24 was that all the policies, what Ye was really focused on, were all the policies are gonna go straight back to the Bible, right? If you have a moral compass from there, it's harder to corrupt, and it's very simple to understand that Judeo-Christian doesn't make any sense because Judeo-Christian is not in the Bible. If you stick to that code, then you're going to be able to find a good core group of people. But then it makes sense, and I got a lot of criticism for posting my a picture that I met Trump last year, if you remember, and I took a picture with him. And obviously, no new wars started when Trump was in office. We can both agree that he did, you know. He's one of the best presidents in recent history, did a much better job than Biden, obviously. But he takes like this weird route. I don't know if you saw at his rally the other day. He was saying they were chanting Genocide Joe, and he says they're not wrong. They're not wrong. But you know, I went to your rally the other day, Trump, and you were, you know, you were talking about the evils that Hamas were doing, and it's hard to see how much he's saying to appease the people that, you know, control the lobby, the people that are funding a lot of the people that are funding all the that are funding AIPAC, and how much he's saying in order, how, like, it's hard to really decipher how much he really believes in this.
The thing is about Trump is he doesn't really believe ideologically in anything, which is actually ironically preferable. Like, he clearly is not a committed Zionist. And you know that because listen how he talks about Israel versus how DeSantis or Nikki Haley talks about Israel. A year ago, like a week after October 7th, Trump came out and said Hezbollah is really smart. And Netanyahu was dumb for letting the attack happen. That's not how, like, ideological Zionists talk about the conflict. Nikki Haley got up the same week on the stage and said, the only thing we need to say about Israel is, what do you want? When do you want it? No questions asked. So it's like, that's what a hardcore Zionist sounds like. A guy that is like basically making a deal with Zionists will say stuff like you just said. He'll go to a rally and say, hey, you're not wrong. But that's because Trump will recognize, because he's a brilliant campaigner, what people are saying that hurts his opponent and lean in, even if it's something that's going to hurt him a little bit with Jewish people. Or like how we'll go out and say, if you're a Jew and you're not voting for me, you need to get your head checked. You're sick. You're not a real Jew. It's like, so they don't talk like that. So That doesn't mean, though, that he's not a Zionist. He had Zionists all up in his administration. Chabad Lubavitch was in the White House when he was in power. I mean, frankly, they're in the White House right now. But so he's going to bring that with him because he's really a vessel. And a lot of people don't even realize this. Trump doesn't care. He doesn't want to govern. He hates governing. He hated it. He doesn't want to run the government. He thinks it's a big chore. Other people in the administration will run it. So he really doesn't care. People say, oh, he's a shill. He's really not, because all he's really about is he just wants to win. He wants to win the election. He likes being the president. He doesn't like governing the country. So that's where it becomes a problem, because he will delegate that to a guy like Jared Kushner, who does want to facilitate the transfer of all this money from the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund into Israel. Therein lies the problem. And he'll take money from Adelson and then move the embassy to Jerusalem and so on. So it's a bit of a complicated picture, but that's why it's a battle kind of around and underneath Trump for who is going to determine what happens in his administration. But it does get a little bit tricky.
But in a sense, that's probably the best role that a U.S. president could possibly play, and that's why no new wars started. That's why he did such a good job geopolitically in shaking hands with all the people that Biden, now is enemies with, because he was good at being the face of the country, like being the winner, being the guy that will show up, being the guy that can make a deal. A lot of that was really important. I remember we had the stream when he announced his run, and you thought it was a low energy speech. We both had the MAGA hats on, and I was happy because it's like, this is by far the best option. And I think you probably changed your opinion, but back then you were pretty upset. How did your opinion change? That was before Ye 24, but I want to see what that process is like from when we saw Trump's announcement to where we are now. We're both like, this is very clearly the best option. We should be full support.
Well, yeah, that was his announcement was a week after the midterms. So it was like a week after, I want to say that was November 3rd, 2022 was the midterms. So I think his speech was a week or two after that, which was just before you and I went out there for Ye 24. And the problem is that Trump really got captured by the Republican Party. Like in 2016, he was running a really insurgent campaign. He was saying, we're going to build a wall and we're going to put tariffs on Mexico and China and we're going to end all the wars. In 2020, he went out and said, I moved the embassy. Black unemployment is super low. We're going to do a platinum plan and the First Step Act. Like, it was all terrible stuff. And in 2024, it seemed like a rehash of that. He was talking about how gas prices were too high. I said, this is not the Trump that I signed up for in 2016. This guy has totally been debeaked, totally defanged. And that's why when Ye 24 came around, I enthusiastically signed up, just like I did for Andrew Yang. It's ironic. A lot of people now say, oh, Nick Fuentes is subversive because he backed Kanye in 24. Before that, they said I was subversive because I backed Andrew Yang in 2019.
Yeah,
but it was very similar.
Too.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, in 2019, it was the same story. It was record high border crossings in May and June 2019. Like, the border was wide open. It had never been higher in 20 years. And I said, this is bullshit. At least with Andrew Yang, we'll get $1,000 a month. And now, I wouldn't have voted for him in a general election, but it was an idea of, let's change the conversation. I'm interested in backing people that are going to change people's way of thinking.
Something new.
Yeah, well, and maybe even push Trump in a different direction. And that's how I saw Ye 24 is, on the upside, Kanye could be president. More likely than not, he may push Trump in a more right-wing direction. He may force Trump to acknowledge Christianity or acknowledge Jewish power. And I think that in that regard, Ye 24 was largely successful. I don't think so much of what has happened would have happened if it wasn't for that. If it wasn't for Ye going out there and saying he loves Hitler and getting canceled like he did, I think in many ways that set the stage for Candace Owens, for Ban the ADL, for even so much of this emboldened rhetoric about Israel after October 7th. So anyway, since that happened, Trump has moved to the right. I think the primary at DeSantis did that also. But I got to be honest, people around Trump that are with us, they're not hopeful. Because the problem is that the Trump administration 1.0 was infiltrated and sabotaged by neocons. The people that are close to Trump right now, they say it's going to be the same exact story. It's going to be deja vu all over again in Trump 2. We're going to be fighting with America First Policy Institute and Brooke Rollins. We're going to be fighting all these piece of shit, fake conservative neocons, just like we were the first time, which is BS. It's like you don't get a second chance like Trump is getting right now with the kind of mandate that he'll have if he wins. And it looks like he may be poised to blunder through it again. And that's very frustrating for people that have sacrificed a lot to fight for him. And, you know, you'd expect that it wouldn't be like that this time. So once again, it's a mixed bag. Nothing is easy. We're in like the fight for our lives, for our country. It's never easy. They're never going to give it to us. Like we do have to show up and fight these people every single day. And even if Trump wins, we're going to be doing that for the next 4 years regardless.
What was that slogan that Ye came up with? It was like something about the loyalists, the lawyers is. Do you remember that? I don't remember the rhyme. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, he said, when you don't know where your lawyers is, you still have your loyalists.
Loyalists, yeah, of course. It's a good rhyme.
Yeah.
And now, the next issue that somebody like Trump would need to address, like besides the very obvious Zionist control in America, is the replacement of white people, which is it's happening in Europe. You're seeing like New York City, for example. And this is why like people are wondering like where should you even live in America? New York City is being completely run over by illegal immigrants. Miami's like a Spanish country, but in Europe, for example, Paris is getting dominated by migrants and refugees. London is like basically Londonistan. The Muslims, we make jokes about that now. It's like it looks like Iraq over there. There's not like white people are getting wiped out really quickly. I watched a James Bond movie from like 2005. And you see the depiction of London back then. It's like it's completely different the way it is now. You see whites walking around. You see like your picture of London is of a white place, people dressed like white people, and now it's completely different. If you look at the football teams, it used to be like Wayne Rooney. I don't know if you know who this is, but it's just all white soccer players, and now there's all people from all over Africa that dominate the teams. Very clearly, white people are getting wiped out quick. And I don't know if you saw, but Andrew Tate was giving the white people some tough love on Twitter, telling them to have kids and how, you know, white men are fucked and all this stuff. And like the men are jerking off to porn and the women are getting addicted to Instagram and they don't want to get married. They want to build a startup business in Miami. And white people got really upset. They started calling him a nigger and all this stuff. And I thought it was funny because, you know, what he said is extremely accurate. You know, white people are clearly getting wiped out. White women are getting psyoped really quickly by feminism. There's not like that a big push for white people to repopulate. And he's right. Like a lot of white people are saying, oh, we're just going to deport all the migrants. How? What are you going to do about it? Like, what are you individually going to do? The best way is to repopulate. But what do you think the change is going to be? Because if we're going to be honest, for your idea of America to become successful, it has to be a white majority. And that makes a lot of sense. You know, it started as a white majority. It was created by white Christians. And for it to remain that same cultural identity, it should probably stay the same. You know, it sounds racist to a lot of people when you say that, but I believe the same thing about Japan. I believe the same thing about Saudi Arabia. If it was created by Japanese people with certain values, it should probably maintain that way. Saudi Arabia was created by Arab Muslims. It should stay that way if they want to keep the identity of this place. So how does America and how do these white European nations maintain their identity?
Well, first of all, I want to say I like the Andrew Tate post. I thought it was hilarious because, you know, white people do need to hear that. I really hate the victim mentality among white people. And people accuse me of that. The difference is I talk descriptively about white people's problems, but I'm also not one of these white people that says, well, but we can't do this, or well, we can't do that, but we can't do this. And I'm somebody that broke all the rules, you know. People told me my whole life, you know, well, I can't just talk about the Jews. Well, I can't just, it's like, I mean, look at the show that I do. I mean, people say, well, you can't say this, you can't say, of course, I can do whatever I want. I can make the world the way I want it to be. That's the kind of mindset that white people need to have. So I appreciate the tough love. I like that. I saw one part of the post that just cracked me up. He said something like, you know, your wife won't have sex with you. You jerk off while she's asleep or have sex with another girl. Condom on. You know, you wouldn't have a baby with another woman because my wife would kill me. Fucking loser.
Yeah.
I was fucking dying at that. And I don't endorse polygamy, of course, but he is absolutely correct. Yeah, I know you do. he is 100% correct that the men in the West are totally cucked by the women. And that is something that nobody wants to talk about. People want to talk about how, non-white people are coming here. They want to talk about Jews run the country, even to some extent. But even among people that will say those things, they don't want to say that men that get married are fucking pussies. And it's not all of them. Before people say, well, I'm married and I'm not a... It's like, yes, you probably are. But men that get married are controlled by their wives. They, I got to run that by my wife. Let me check with my wife. They do what their wives tell them.
Happy wife, happy life. That's a very white phrase. You got to be honest, man.
I would never say anything other than that. It's true. It's what it is. Men are totally cucked to their wives and to their women, and it's a big problem. And, I said this on my show the other day. I was thinking about this when I was driving. It's like men say that. They say, my wife would kill me. It's like, no, she's fucking not. What do you mean she's going to kill you? You think she's literally going to kill you? She can't. She's smaller than you. How is she going to kill you? What you mean is she's going to get mad? Tell her to suck it up. Well, she'll divorce you. You got to be willing to kill her. No, I'm kidding. You can't kill her. But you kind of need, she kind of needs to think that you might. She kind of needs to think, well, maybe if I did, he might kill me.
The possibility needs to exist somewhere.
Yeah, it needs to be in there. And listen, I mean, this is something that, you don't endorse and I don't endorse, and it's going to be extremely unpopular for me to say. But there is this idea that there is no legitimate way for men to control women in this country. If you try to discipline them physically, well, that's just unspeakable. It's just totally outside of the conversation.
You know where it's not?
Islam, Muslim
countries. Yeah, there you go. Islam. There's that's the final law. It's in the Quran, and I'm not trying to misrepresent Islam, but like if women are supposed to obey their husbands. And if they don't, it's not supposed to be like extremely violent, but it's supposed to be like a stick on the shoulder, They're supposed to be a little bit like, hey, if you don't obey your husband, like this is what's going to happen. But women in the West are not afraid of that. In fact, they're incentivized to completely rob and destroy men. A lot of them have become sex workers, and they turn marriage into something that was sacred and sanctimonious. They turned into a giant show. Like, why would you even, if you think about it, like, why are white guys even having like public weddings? Why do they do that? It should just be in Islam, for example, you just get a lot of Muslim women, like the really pious ones, they don't even want to get married legally because they think it's controlled by Zionists. They're like, I don't want to go to Kafir courts. They just want to have it in the mosque and be married religiously. And then as long as it's under religion, that's the way to go. But my bad, I interrupted you.
Well, no, but you're exactly right. And I think that is one of the reasons why Muslim countries, I think, have remained more traditional. It's because they don't have feminism. In some places, they have elements of modernity or economic development, or they've had philosophy, but they don't have feminism. That's a big part of it. And you could debate and you could quibble about which comes first, as a modernity or feminism, but they don't have it. I think that's a big part of it. And you can't touch them, God forbid. You can't even really be mean to them, because if you're mean to women, now that's psychological, it's emotional abuse. It's, so basically women get to boss men around. Men can't do anything. Well, of course they can, but they're told you can't do anything about it. That's so terrible, and so on. So how are we supposed to control the women? And then we're all slaves to the fickle and emotional and hormonal nature of women. That is a huge part, not the only part, of why our society is declining. I think there's chemical reasons. I think men today literally have lower testosterone. I think that is something to do with plastics, microplastics, and maybe chemicals. It could have something to do with technology and how we're raised. So there's environmental factors, but a huge part of it is that we have completely lost touch with custom, tradition, religion, anything that would suggest that women should have a lower role in society. And even the most trad Christian conservatives won't admit this, like this Nala porn star. She literally is sucking dick and pegging guys for her entire adult life, disgraces her families. I said on Telegram, in a Muslim country, she would justifiably be honor killed for going on and being the Hagau queen and dishonoring her pastor Protestant father. Rather, in America, she gets invited on for a therapy session with Michael Knowles for him to say, wow, you're so fucking brave. You're so heroic because you stopped pegging guys on OnlyFans for 2 seconds. She's posting pictures on Twitter with her boyfriend. She's got a boyfriend. What kind of man? Now, the boyfriend's not white, so that's a W for white people. But it's like, what kind of man would want to be with this? But that's what goes on. And, so these, even the trad Christians are cucked to the women. And I see the way that women talk to men. And I think that, if men got together and just said, you know what? Shut the fuck up, bitch. You don't talk to men that way. I see the way women mouth off to men in public. And men just tolerate it. Even like Michael Sartain. When I met Michael Sartain, he's a nice guy. Like, I like him. He was very respectful to me. So I'm not saying this in like a shitty way. But did you see that clip when he was on the Whatever podcast? And she said something so sarcastic to him. She's like, did you hear it now, Michael? And like, now, if that were me, I don't have a girlfriend, but if that were me, I would be like, what the fuck did you say to me? He just kind of took it. He was like, babe, why did you? And this is like a red pill womanizer influencer. Like, we can't let women talk to men like this. We can't let women be walking around in yoga pants and they're all 300 pounds. It starts with the men. And the biggest irony is it's the most cucked trad guys that are always saying, don't blame the poor women. Women are the weaker sex, so we can't blame them. We have to lead them. But then when it's time to lead them, they will never be willing to tell a woman to shut up. They're right in some sense, but if you're willing and you want to lead women, you got to be willing to say, hey, shut the fuck up, bitch. You don't talk to me like that. I am a man. You are a woman. Shut your mouth. And kind of like grab her by the arm, like, hey, we're leaving. Men gotta be willing to do this kind of stuff because, like, this whole, I'm rambling. I don't endorse physical violence or anything like that, but we got to control these women. So don't be mad. Tate is right. Don't be mad at him for saying it. People are mad because it's true, because it's a humiliating, emasculating reality. And Tate just said it. And people are pissed because they don't like how it makes them feel. But it's true.
I mean, he struck a nerve. Like, instead of them having more kids and they start calling him a nigger on Twitter, it's just, he pointed out something that's plainly obvious. Like, Michael Knowles, for example, I don't know who this guy is, but he works for Israeli Wire. He's a slave to Ben Shapiro. And you see, this is his content. It's just giving her a giant platform to go and get more OnlyFans subscribers. I think Pearl exposed that she didn't even delete it. She's still there farming these people. And it shows a great path for white women in the West. They can go become sex workers and then find Christ. And then all your sins are going to be forgiven. And then someone on Daily Wire is going to give you a giant platform. And then look at Steven Crowder. It's the perfect example of like how like white guys can't even, she called it psychological abuse. Steven Crowder's wife hijacked the cameras in his house. And what did he tell her to do? He was just like telling her basically like the Islamic way of how husbands communicate to their wives. Like, no, you can't do this. You're supposed to obey your husband. You're pregnant. Stay home. Let me go do the thing. Don't be running around.
He said, watch it.
Watch it.
Yeah.
That's so normal.
Talk about being a prisoner. You're in a house where you're constantly being surveilled. And if your wife doesn't like you, she's going to take the surveillance recordings and use them in a divorce proceeding where you're sitting with your feet kicked up and you go, hey, watch it, bitch. Oh, the abuse. Take his kids, take his money, destroy his company.
In his own house, in his home that he's worked so hard to pay for, to the kids that he provides for, and that's not enough for his wife, that she's sitting there and him saying, watch it. And I can't believe, I was looking at this, like, how is this a scandal? People were really thinking that this is psychological abuse. Yeah, of course it is if a woman takes it. Even her taking something out of context in an argument, trying to make it look bad, I'm still like, this is absolutely nothing. So, I mean, it does make a good argument for, I know you're against polygamy, but that's how a lot of women get to act in check, because in the Middle East, if you have a woman who acts that way and she gets upset about watch it, you just go to wife number 2 or wife number 3, spend a couple days with her, and then she's in timeout. She's thinking about what she did wrong. She gets to process that. It's like basically putting a kid in punishment. And then you come back to her when she knows how to act correctly. But women in the West are not incentivized at all to be good wives. We give them so many different paths. Like we give them a big social media platform. They get to run to Instagram and shave their head and change their gender if they don't like the marriage. They get to go and sleep with black guys and go like, why would Tom Brady's wife leave Tom Brady? Does anybody explain that to me? Like one of the most successful white guys in the history of white guys ever, and that's not enough for her? She needs to get, what else does she think is out there? The constant need, and it's because of we keep enabling this more and more. So it's good to see that. But what do you think? How do we how do you guys really, how does this get fixed in Europe, for example? How do you stop the replacement from happening?
Well, what makes it extremely difficult is that there's a pincer, which is, obviously the population, the demographics are determined by the proportion of the native people versus the foreign people. And the pincer is that the native people is shrinking because they're not having enough kids, and the foreign population is increasing because they're being brought in due to immigration and their birth rate is higher. So there's this pincer. I mean, understandably, you'd have to modify both by shutting down the borders and deporting people that are there, and which is a political solution. And on the other hand, you need to get the birth rate up. What is extremely difficult is how to get the birth rate up. It seems that, and Keith Woods is actually writing an article about this. I'm looking forward to it on a Substack because we've been talking about this. There seems to be no reliable way to substantially increase the birth rate. This is a problem with modernity because it's not just in Western white civilization. It's in West civilization. It's in the Slavo-Orthodox civilization. It's also in South Korea and Japan, where they have catastrophic population decrease. Even China is now below replacement rate after the one-child policy. So it seems to be a problem. And by the way, the birth rate is collapsing in the Western Hemisphere altogether, even in Mexico and the foreign-born population in America. Hispanic birth rate's going down too. So it seems to be connected to modernity. And people talk about, like I said, it could be chemicals. It could be that women that are educated defer childbearing. Feminism has a lot to do with women being educated and also has to do with sleeping around. There's a lot of reasons. Contraceptives, I'm sure, play a big role. I think, though, the biggest problem is the lack of religiosity. I would have to think that that has almost everything to do with it, because when you subscribe to a religion, you understand that sexuality is governed by a sacrament. In the case of Catholics, you have to get married to have sex. And when you have sex, you can't use contraceptives. Consequently, both men and women want to have sex, therefore they get married. And in having sex in marriage, they will be having a lot of kids at a young age, which means they will be having, 4 to 10 kids. And if everybody believed in a religion, well, everybody would be doing that. It seems to me like that's kind of the primary variable. The one developed country that doesn't have catastrophic fertility rate decline is Israel. And that is a country which still has a religious and nationalistic fervor. There are people, and they're not all religious there, but a lot of them are. And the ones that aren't religious are very nationalistic. So I don't know how you cultivate that other than by winning the hearts and minds of the people. And I imagine that is a road that runs through censorship. Of course, mass media is holding back people from becoming religious or traditional. We can't look at liberalism as an organic phenomenon when liberalism is held in place at all times by censorship. A lot of people say that's just the way it is. People just aren't having kids because that's just how it goes. It's like, is it? Because it seems like media is a heavily regulated environment. So is education, and they both seem to be promulgating liberalism. So I wonder if you changed education and changed the media, could it go back in the other direction? But I think that's an open-ended question. What you would really need is for the right people to be empowered, and then to kind of get creative with different ways of ruling and governing to increase the birth rate. So I guess it's kind of a meandering path, but to answer your question, we would really need a creative ruler to experiment with this. But the ruler would need to be somebody that's actually interested in increasing the birth rate. Right now, we have this constellation of elite institutions. They actually seem to want less people. They're Malthusians. There is some truth to this. They want a smaller population to lower the carbon footprint. And there is some truth to this. I know people, say that, and I've said this before, I don't think the transhumanism thing's 100% correct, or that's exclusively what motivates the elites. But there is an agenda to lower the population. I think that is 100% real. So obviously, you can't have anti-natalists in control of the country and expect that we would find the solution to turn the birth rates around. It's not a surprise that there isn't kind of like a reliable way to do that discovered yet when that's who's in charge.
Well, is it really about carbon footprint, or is that all just is that another psyop because they understand that if we have a family and if we are religious and we're strong, we have a lot of children, we have a lot of purpose, and we have meaning for our lives, that we're going to be fulfilled and we're going to be happy and we're going to be more self-sufficient. If we don't have any of these things, and we're messaging girls to go play with their feetsies, then we're going to be more easily controlled, right? If we remove the idea of family, we remove the idea of God, then we're going to be sad, depressed, and we're going to be reliant on the system forever. It doesn't lowering the population, it seems like it almost seems impossible. Don't they just want to have ultimate control? And do they just have really malicious intents? Are they not just serving the devil? And they want to have ultimate power. They want to be worshipped like gods on earth. And so the best way to do that is to have us as depressed as possible, as weak as possible, low testosterone, while the women are arguing at us. And so we have to be reliant on the people that have access to all the money, to all the power.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, but I also think that it is a depopulation agenda. I know they're trying to increase the population in America because the whole way that the system is structured right now, the population basically can't shrink. If the population starts to shrink, they call it a permanent recession. And that's because you'll have huge contractions in like the construction sector, and then that begets contractions in other sectors, and then certain towns just won't exist. They won't be able to support police stations and fire departments. And it's basically this compounding problem that it's like a never-ending economic collapse. So on the one hand, they don't seem to be trying to shrink the population of specific countries. At the same time, though, you look around the world, they're not trying to kickstart the birth rates. They don't seem to be too concerned about that. And I think maybe a part of that is the fact that as we develop and become a more technologically advanced civilization, there is going to be less and less of a need for dumb people. And this is a problem that you're seeing. You realize that when you look at things like life expectancy, it's actually kind of a convoluted metric because 100 years ago, so many babies were dying because babies that weren't strong enough would just be taken by illness, or, if they had genetic defects, they just die right away. Now, everybody lives. Basically, every baby lives, and every person, no matter how disabled, no matter how stupid, no matter how whatever, is going to live a long life. And it's like, what do you do with all these people? And especially, what do you do with all these people when there's technological unemployment? When robots and machines and AI, they're going to take the jobs of lawyers and doctors. Forget about the jobs they're going to take from people that flip burgers at McDonald's and stuff like that. Half the country doesn't work. Half the country's on welfare. What do you do with all these people? It's going to be kind of a tough situation. And you factor in, I think they do believe in climate change. And it's a clear correlation between population size and the effect on climate change. We're not going to be able to make enough electric cars for everybody because there's not enough lithium in the world. Newsflash, that means nobody's going to be driving cars. That means everybody's going to be stuck where they are. Nobody's going to have a big house. People can't eat meat. They can't be strong. It's going to have all these cascading effects. So I think that it is like, there is definitely something to that, whether it's a design, whether it's a malicious plan, or this is just kind of the natural conclusion of their utilitarian worldview. That is where it's headed. It's like a very anti-life, very anti-people agenda. And so it's not, they don't want the masses to be having 10 kids and have a big house and have a guns, like political reasons, economic reasons. So yeah, we could speculate about what their true agenda is, but you look at their policies, you look at where the world is headed, they're not doing anything to arrest this trend. So I think that speaks to the fact that in some ways they must be okay with it continuing.
Are you hopeful about the future of the youth, or do you think that it's going to take decades, like you were talking about with the political movement? I'm seeing a return in a lot of like red pill ideas. The word faggot is making a big return. Retard is on its way back. If you look at like Instagram reel comments, like people always spamming well whenever a black person is stealing. There's more, people are more aware, and that they're not really afraid of the canceling anymore. And it seems like there's like a positive push on the youth. And I also noticed that when you did the Cheezer stream, how many people were spamming W's, especially when you started talking about what happened in 1939 between 1945. A lot of people are really open to these ideas without being extremely judgmental anymore. Do you think that the youth, are you optimistic about, like, say the teenagers, like the sort of kick audience, the normie, you know, like hip? Where do you think that they're going to start leading politically when they get older?
I think that a lot of them aren't very based. You know, there is some truth to that people are starting to be more open and the Overton window has shifted. That sort of thing is more acceptable. But your average person is pretty liberal. You know, your average person is like basically a feminist, basically pro-gay, basically pro-abortion. They have no problem with multiracialism. Like, and this is something I said to Cheezer also. You look at like young white guys, and they are more negrified than any generation of white people before.
Yeah.
It used to be that wigger was like its own subculture. Now they're all wiggers. You look around, it's like every young white kid is wearing socks and slides. That's like a black thing. And it's a black thing because, you know, they can't be bothered to put shoes on and tie the shoelaces. They go out in sweatpants and slides because they just rolled off the couch and now they're in Five Guys. You know, it's a white, and you look on TikTok as well, and it's all this wigger talk and wigger dances and wigger music and all this kind of stuff. And I hate that. They talk like it. They all do this like black voice. A lot of them do.
No cap, bud. No slack cap.
Yeah, and just even like the intonation of their voice, they're trying to sound, it's like you don't need to try to sound black to sound like a player or sound respectable. Try and, you know, you're white. Try and sound white. Our ancestors landed on the fucking moon. Why do you want to sound like some bum? I always see these rappers like Playboy Carti. Playboy Carti, I hate. Because he's one of these guys where everybody's like, he's such an artist. Oh, he's so cool. And then he gets on these talk shows. He doesn't have 3 sentences to put together because he's an imbecile. He can't put 3 sentences together. He knows nothing about art, nothing about music. At least a guy like Ye has ideas. At least a guy like Ye, I mean, and you know this because you know him, he would have to kind of tone up the blackness when he was with other black people. Yeah. I noticed this. When he was with the black people, he would kind of tone up how black he was acting. But in private,
he's fully consumed by it now. Like nowadays, you can see that he's been all around black people for the past several months. I don't think he's been around a white person in quite a while.
Well, yeah, and when he knew he was safe, when he knew it was like not a judgment-free zone, and he could be himself, that's when he realized that his mom was a professor. He didn't come from Chicago. He came from Hyde Park. Big difference. Came from the campus of University of Chicago. He liked art. He liked poetry. You know, he's like a white autist in many ways. He's got the soul of like a white autist. And that's why that's what fuels his genius. Not playing into this gangbanger, I fuck yo bitch, whatever. So I fucking hate these like black guys. They go in a music video and they make these ridiculous noises, ad-libs, and everybody go, whoa, that's an aura, so cool. Then they go on a talk show and they're sitting there like, I don't know. I just made this sound. It sounded good, huh? You know, blah, blah. You sound like a fucking idiot. I don't know why these are role models, especially Lil Mabu. Fucking hate Lil Mabu. This like rich yuppie from New York. He might be Jewish. I think he's
I'm pretty sure he's Jewish.
Probably. And I see one of these videos where they're like, no, but you can't say the N-word. Oh no. Can I hit the lick on a scooter? Like, it's so emasculating. It's so fucking disgusting. We need to get back to white pride. We need white people to feel strong, feel powerful, feel good about themselves. You know, and, you know, I'm probably not the guy to do that because I'm not like, we need guys like Jake Shields, you know, or Shanks. Those guys are like a picture of like white power, you know. Me, I'm like, I guess I'm pretty nerdy too, but anyway, so I would temper that. I mean, you're right, like the Overton window's moving and people are getting more like edgy, less woke, but they're still cooked. Okay, they're still deeply cooked. In my opinion.
Sean Strickland is actually the really good example of that. And that's why I wish I got to speak to him about that. I wanted to, part of the agreement of us fighting was that, like, okay, if I do this fight, let's do a podcast. And I was going to try to red pill him and talk about these issues and see about it, but it never came to fruition. But yes, something like that, because white guys have a lack of identity, you know, because there's almost no white culture anymore. You can't even say, like, when you hear the words white power, people get, they get all weird and autistic. They don't, but you say black power, people take a knee and put their fist up. You say Asian power and people like think about sushi and ramen noodles. There's an identity around that. There's no white identity really in America anymore. It's very fringe and small, and they've done a great job of making people ashamed of that. And that's why they gravitate so much towards Playboy Cardi. And it's really easy to psyop white people into thinking that stuff is cool. Like the fact that Lil Mabu is, you know, I don't really care about him. I don't want it to get clipped on TikTok, but it is what it is. But I don't think just the inflection you're talking about, like the sound of the white streamers' voices and the inflection and the intonation. I don't think a lot of it is intentional for these white people.
No, it isn't.
If you remember the video of that white girl on the plane, I don't know if she saw a demon. I think she saw a djinn. She was on the plane and she says, "That motherfucker is not real," and that's like really honest to the way she thinks and talks. Right? She's a normal white girl, but she's like, "That mother." White women weren't saying motherfucker 15 years ago. That was a black woman saying, especially yelling at a plane and pointing and doing the SHNEAKO turn. But in her moment of distress, she turned into like a black gay guy. It shows how much the culture has been infected by this, and they've done a good job. And again, if you look at the results of this, a lot of Zionists control the hip hop industry. They control they're behind a lot of these shows. They've made it uncool to be white altogether. And if you look at the shows, all the white characters are gay. They're gay, and gay white people get all their culture from black people, so it infects them. And I think it was probably all intentional to get rid of white culture completely. Because I mean, if they have strong white identity, then you have a strong nation that's gonna stand up when you try to push Judeo-Christian values. They want to have complete control over it, and it's sad to see that when you see a woman say that motherfucker's not real. You're like, what happened to like classy white ladies? What happened to like, even you look at the sororities now with the white girls? They're dressed up and down like Meg Thee Stallion with the water bottles and like the pink wristbands and everything. It's just, there's not. Don't you miss when white girls were like Legally Blonde, when they were kind of the purse, and they were like, it's pretty like not even before Britney Spears. Like, what's that show? The Los Angeles show, Paris Hilton, like in the late '90s. That sort of you miss when white girls did their own thing without compromising too much. But
yeah,
I think you're taking away some of the credit. People do. I don't think people look at you as the nerdy guy as much as you're saying, especially like when you push the guy off of you when he was trying to shove you at AFPAC or something like that, and when you threw the Sprite and almost got us killed in that In-N-Out. You know, pretty black move.
That was white power. No, that was white power.
That was white power. Oh man,
right, they started it. They started it, bro. Like, we can't take shit from these people. Well, and the other guy was white. The guy that attacked me at the Fuentes rally was he was actually Polish, I guess. So not totally white. That's a joke. But no, but the thing is, like, America is Negroified, and the problem isn't even like black people per se. It's not black people in themselves, but it is the lower socioeconomic section of black people that generate this toxic culture of people not giving a shit about how they look, how they're perceived, their manners. They don't care about speaking properly, all these kinds of things. Because, I mean, I know black people that, like, you know, John Miller is one of my closest friends, and he's like a savant with music and with the piano, and he has a classical Western education. I go to him and ask him for Shakespeare quotes and stuff like that. So, you know, I don't want people to think this is just like a totally anti-black diatribe. It's against this bottom of the barrel culture, which is shared by both black and white people. And you're so on the money. You're the only other person I've heard say this other than me, which is that it's like gay men are kind of a good barometer of this. Decades ago, the gay lisp or the gay accent, it was them emulating Valley girls. What were Valley girls? Blonde, beautiful white girls from the Valley, close to Los Angeles, from
90210.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Now, who do the white women and white gay men emulate? Black women. Now, instead of doing like a Valley girl accent, now they both do like a Cardi B accent. Like you said, a Megan Thee Stallion accent. They have this like TikTok accent where they all do the same fucking hand motions. They all do like this, but not like an Italian like this. They kind of do like this with like a head pivot. That's what black women do. I know that. Don't clip me doing that. But they all do that shit. They all talk like and I'm like, and it's turned into like a 3 a.m. McDonald's brawl. That has become our entire culture. It's like black people fighting, tearing each other's weaves out at 3 a.m. at a fucking gas station. Extrapolate that out. That's now our culture. Young white men wearing slides with socks. It's like, what, did you roll out of bed? The style is wearing sweatpants and hoodies. Put a fucking pair of pants on. They don't have that going on in Europe, and rightfully Europeans look down on us. You know, those Europeans are like Belgium and the Netherlands. They look at us and they're like, you're trash. You're American trash. You wear sweatpants and slides. You know, you eat like shit. So white people really need to get those kinds of old sensibilities back. And the last thing I'll say, some of this stuff is kind of cringe, but it's also based. You know, every now and again you go on Twitter and they put out a post and it's like, here's a picture of an old building. Here's a picture of a new building. The old looks good. The new looks like shit. But you genuinely look at how America used to be, not just the architecture, but the institutions. People were well dressed. The architecture was great. Services were good. You know, my mother tells me this story. My mom's uncle used to run security at the Marshall Field store in downtown Chicago. And Marshall Field was one of the great titans of industry of America. And he was a retailer out of Chicago. And the Marshall Field store, it was like an event. When you went to the store, you got dressed up and it was a big deal. And my mom's uncle ran the security there downtown. And she said, you know, you go there back 60 years ago, it was like a different world than when you go into Macy's today. You go into Macy's today and there's shit everywhere. There's garbage everywhere. Clothes are strewn out on the floor and everything's disorganized. The service is terrible. Everything's cheap. It's like people need to recognize how far we've fallen. It's not just that the architecture looked better. It's that the civilization, the heart beating inside of it was better. Because people cared. People cared how they looked. They cared about their work. They cared about their family. They cared about their community. Now, people throw garbage on the street. Everything's dirty. No one gives a shit about anything. You go to McDonald's, you're lucky if they give you eye contact or say thank you. I mean, you go to Chick-fil-A and everyone jerks them off because they say, have a nice day. Like, can you imagine? So people just need to get real and start to take pride in their civilization again. And that starts with, I mean... Yeah, go ahead.
The culture did a good job of making it cringe to try hard. They made it cool to be a complete degenerate. Degeneracy is the face of success now. But back then when they say like old is good and new is bad, the face of success was somebody who was dressed up, was like, you know, traditionally, even though I'm not like proud to admit it, but it'd be like a white guy in a suit. It'd be like, that's like a Superman, like he's Clark Kent and then Superman, a successful, well-dressed, he's representative of everything around him. But they made the image of cool to be like a sexy red. You know, a mother who's twerking on stage even though she's pregnant and bending over, even that she's raising children and popping Percocets and getting high. And they did this through Black Lives Matter, through like rejection, because they made it seem like rebellion is good. But you're not really rebelling against the people that control the world. You're just rebelling against a couple cops who are paid like $60,000 a year. You're not really fighting against the system by being a degenerate. You're just degrading everybody else around you. You're not being cool. Black Lives Matter did a great job of like giving the young people the feeling that they're rebelling, like that liberal 60s, like I'm anti-war, like a Vietnam college student. I'm getting high, fuck the system. You're not actually fucking up the system. You're just fucking up your neighborhood. We need to make it cool to try hard again. And it goes back to your saying of just be yourself, because people are, it's the generational old feeling of wanting to be accepted by the crowd. If everybody else around you is not trying hard, they're not doing anything, they've given up to degeneracy, like what are you going to do? You're going to be the cringe person trying hard? We got to give them the feeling that it's okay to be successful, well put together, and well spoken. It's got to be good. But one thing I see a lot, because I think we have a strong overlap in our audience, and what I think Andrew Tate was talking about, I have a lot of the, I went back and forth with the Groypers, and I call them the frog people. I yell at them quite a bit because they're pretty hard on me. But I think it's a good like tough love relationship, because I want to motivate a lot of these people. A lot of the people that agree with both of us, they hide behind accounts completely. And I understand what you give them sympathy. You're like, oh, they're going to get fired from their job. They're going to get expelled from school. But we need more of these people to be putting themselves out there, because anybody else, like the guys like us, we get wiped out and canceled from anything. And it's like, okay, now you're begging me to do the same exact thing that you want. Play the greatest hits nonstop, tell you what you already believe in, but you're still hiding behind a frog account. Like, Stan, if you want me to be your hero and you want me to be yelling for this all the time, like, hey, maybe help me out a little bit. Take down the frog profile picture and maybe put yourself out there a little bit too. Be a good citizen, be a role model in your community as well. I want to see more of these people do that. All the people that call me a mutt and all this stuff, and call Andrew Tate a nigger and all. It's like, why don't you put your face out there as well and stand up for what you believe in? All the people, I have so many Christians that watch my content. I would say like I have more Christians that watch my stuff than Muslim viewers, even though I talk about Islam every single day. And it's because these people are like, you should speak up for this. Why don't you talk about Zionists more? Well, why don't you put yourself out there too? I'm curious to what you think about that.
Well, I think that it's best for most people not to be too outspoken in this way, only because, as you and I know, it's like, I cannot do anything other than this now. I've done this, and now I couldn't get, if I wanted to, I couldn't get hired anywhere. I couldn't get into school anywhere. Like, if you dedicate yourself to saying certain things, that's the only thing that you're allowed to do. It's the only thing you can do. So I don't typically say that people need to go all the way out. I think people should be respectful of the fact that the people that do put themselves out there are taking on all this risk. And I also think that, with somebody like yourself, I would tell people, SNEAKO's not like running for office. Like you're a live streamer, and a lot of the content you do isn't even necessarily political. So, the expectations are different. If you were like a strictly political figure, you said you'd kind of dissed me a little. You're like, my content's monotonous. And it's like, well, and you're right. But that's because it's a nightly show. I do a nightly politics show, and I go live every night, and I talk about politics for 2 hours. You don't do that. You have been a YouTuber for 10 years.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but it wasn't a diss. It was more like rating.
I know. I'm teasing you.
It was ranking as a streamer, like as in terms of content, like it's not diverse. That's all I'm saying.
I know. I don't take it personally. I wasn't offended, but I'm saying like, but me, I'm strictly political first, streamer second. I mean, I could see a future where I'm only political and not even a streamer. You're a streamer. So I think you're in kind of a unique position, and I think people should take that into account. What I will say, though, about people is people need to take a stand. You don't need to take this specific stand or a specific stand on a certain issue. But what I thought about after I talked with Jeremy Boring is the whole world confronted me after I got canceled like 7 years ago. And the whole world said, you have to stop saying this stuff. You have to do that. You have to do it this way. You have to say this. And I said, no. And the world had to get out of the way. It took almost 10 years, but by the end of this period, Jeremy Boring had to talk to me and say, I'm troubled by what you say, but you're a hell of a broadcaster and you've got quite the movement and blah, blah, blah. And, people need to realize life is so short. It passes you by so fast. And like, what really matters? People need to start to begin to take a stand in their lives. Even on little things. I feel like so many people just kind of let life wash over them. They let the world just kind of have its way with them. And like something specific is the vaccine. I remember a few years ago when they were mandating everybody take the vaccine, I was telling people, don't get the vaccine for many reasons, but maybe the most important one, if the government can force you against your will to inject something into your blood, Like, what would you not let them do? It's your blood. I mean, it doesn't get, not even symbolic, literally. Your fucking blood, they're gonna mess with your organs. They're gonna hold you down and say, we will fire you if you don't put this in your blood. And people said, all right, and they rolled up their fucking sleeve. And I remember people would super chat me and say, you know, hey man, like, but if I don't get the vax, I'm gonna get like fired, and then what? It's like, are you really so unwilling to even get fired from a job that you're gonna let the government rape your bloodstream?
It's worse than rape. It's actually worse than rape. I would argue.
Worse.
Yeah.
It's far worse than rape. But that's how people are. Is like, people are looking for permission, even from somebody like myself, to lay down for everything. You got to stand up for something. But people, even if it's little stuff, but you know what happens? People don't want to be a Karen. They don't want to make a fuss. People just kind of want to go through life without getting in any kind of conflict. But you can't live like that. You got to be, especially men, you got to be born for the storm. You got to look for, you got to choose your battles, but you got to look for them and take your stand places, because it's been generations of this, which is why we've lost our country. Generations of white flight, happy wife, happy life, you know, you name it, letting the world just have its way with you. And if that's how it's going to go, then we're never going to change the world. So that doesn't mean you got to jump up on the table at In-N-Out and say, you know, we don't like Israel, but you do have to pick your battles.
You remember after we went to In-N-Out, I don't know if you told this part of the story, we went to another restaurant, and you almost had like a, it was like a, you had like a movement there. You're like, we just left In-N-Out and they kicked me out of there. I couldn't even have a burger. It was like this like movie moment. Like, this guy can't even have a burger in this country. What's happening to this? We need to, and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just trying to eat. I was hungry.
That was like Larry David. That was like Larry David.
That was very Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I'm like slamming my hand up.
It was a black and Jewish moment, ironically, at the same time.
That's guilty as charged, yes.
But yeah, COVID was a perfect litmus test for that. You got to see a lot of people were looking at social media to see what they were supposed to believe before they made up their own opinion. They wanted to see first how much it was okay to stand up for this stuff. Like, when can I walk outside? When can I get vaccinated? And I think a lot of people are not going to fall for the next one, hopefully, because they fell for the brainwashing this first time. Yeah. We'll see though.
No, I don't know. I think that kind of, it proved to me the opposite. Like, people will do anything. Everyone, you know, it sounded crazy for decades that like the government would forcibly vaccinate you, and then it happened, and there wasn't a ton of resistance. I mean, like, there were pockets, but it's not like there were riots in the streets. In Australia, they voted for more of it. Like, they wanted to be put in camps to be quarantined. So I hope it'll be better the second time around. People just kind of need to like stop living in fear. You need to be able to face this stuff. And it's just like with the wife thing. My wife would kill me. Oh, my boss would kill me. Oh, someone would kill me. It's like, are you afraid of dying? Like, we shouldn't be so afraid of consequences. Like, people are pretty, you'd be surprised. People are pretty resilient. People can go to jail and people can have their life destroyed and they can come back in ways. You can always pick up the pieces. So we got to be willing to take a wrecking ball to things. And even if that means our own lives, you know.
Well, why did you do your own stream today? I'm confused.
I'm gonna whenever this is over.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't want to hold you too long. If you got to get your own streaming tonight, I'm sure that they're going to be upset if I keep you too long. But it was a good reunion. It's been too long. Glad you have you back on once again. We should do this. When do you have any plans to come back to Miami anytime soon?
I'll be there in a couple weeks if you want to chill.
You will? Yeah, I'll probably be here if I don't move to the Middle East before then and just get out of this place. I don't know what I'm gonna do. When I came back from a month of being in the Middle East, they searched all my phones at the airport. I don't know if that was
really?
They took all my phones and like downloaded
Random
my
search.
Yeah, I was sure if it was randomly selected. I don't know if it was because I'm talking about Zionists or because I look like a terrorist. I'm not sure which one it was, but maybe it was the streams with you. But regardless, man, I've accepted it. I'm never going to be accepted by the mainstream, so I'm not going to try to be. Just got to be myself.
Love it. Be yourself, and we got your back. Royper's got your back. But yeah, good catching up with you, man. I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I hope you continue to be yourself too, and I'm glad that next time we talk, let's see if we can push the Overton window even further.
Let's do it. This is our year.
All right, man. America first. Thanks for coming on.
America first. Yeah, take it easy.
Peace. All right, chat. Time to call fresh. Time to call Fresh Prince CEO, chat. All right, the Zerka fan. Let me call him up real quick. You guys want me to call Zerka? All right, everyone is spamming Z's the whole time. What did he say? He just said, shit, turning pecan. Oh, he's turning his PC on. Okay, everybody was spamming Z's the whole time, like he wasn't even ready, bro. Pick up cokehead. You guys are spamming trumpets and all this shit, and he wasn't even ready. All right, guys, we're gonna call Destiny. You ready for the next guest? B-tier streamer. I don't even remember the last time I spoke to him, man. I don't even remember the last time. Good conversation. Good conversation. You can find Nick on cozy.tv/Nick if you guys didn't know. That's where he streams. Add Muslim nights, so we're going to keep doing calls all night, chat. Oh, echo. My bad, we're going to keep doing calls all night. Yeah, you could follow my cozy.tv/Nick. Yeah, there's a lot of people in here right now. Cool. Let me play the intro one more time. Let me go take